On today's show, the Cavs and Isaac Okoro have agreed on a new contract. Okoro got a 3-year deal worth $38 million. I think that's a really good value for the Cavs. We're going to talk about it right here on today's Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, and a number of other stops along the way. Have a great show lined up for you today, talking about Isaac Okoro, his contract extension, how the Cavs can use him moving forward, and what this means for the Cavs cap sheet this year and down the line. But I do want to say thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Big announcement as we are going back to 5 days a week starting now. This is Monday's episode. There will be episodes all week long. You're not going to want to miss it. That means you have to make sure you're subscribed. Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave a 5-star rating. Say a nice word in a review. Also, we're on YouTube. Check us out. Locked On Cavs YouTube channel. Just search Locked On Cavs on YouTube. If you're watching this video right now, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed and click the notification bell so you are alerted anytime Locked On Cavs content goes live. Of course, we are a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Isaac Okoro's new contract with the Cavs, after waiting around in restricted free agency for months and months. It feels like this happens to the Cavs more than any other franchise. I know that, it did happen with Lauri Markkanen a couple of years back with the Chicago Bulls, but what happened with that? He ended up in Cleveland, right? So we have seen a number of these things play out with the Cavs. Isaac Okoro, Colin Sexton before him, Tristan Thompson back in the day. So this is something that the Cavs have been well versed in. But it's a 3-year deal for Okoro, $38 million. I think this is a good value for the Cavs. I think Isaac Okoro signed a deal that's probably worth a little bit less than he had hoped he was going to get at the start of free agency. And I think that the Cavs are beneficiaries here of a market that dried up. And I do believe that if Isaac Okoro was a free agent in a different year, where there are more teams with cap space, where there are more teams that have an appetite to spend, I think he's a player that probably could have gotten 3 years, 45, 3 years, $50 million. So locking him in at 3 years and $38 million, I think is really good for the Cavs. I think it's really, really good for the Cavs. So one of the things that I see when I get when I see these contracts come across, and I believe ESPN's Brian Windhorst is the one that says this, and it really clicked in my brain. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. But when someone signs a deal, I instantly ask myself, if the team that just signed this player, so in this case, obviously it's the Cavs, could they trade that player today on that contract? I think Isaac Okoro is very tradable on the contract that he's on. I think that this is a deal that is going to look good, especially as the salary cap continues to rise. I think Isaac Okoro is on a great. This is really the common theme of the offseason for the Cavs. I know they haven't made a ton of moves, but I think everything they've done has been very team friendly. Donovan Mitchell signing an extension, team friendly. Evan Mobley signing an extension and having provisions that are not just making All-NBA team, that boost it all the way up to the next max. He has to be first or second team. I think that's a team-friendly thing. I believe Jarrett Allen's contract extension, extremely team-friendly. I think this is a very team-friendly deal. I think the Cavs have won a lot of negotiations this summer, and I think Isaac Okoro is on that list of negotiations that the team have won. I think if this is a different financial climate, Isaac Okoro would probably be on another team and would probably be making upwards of $15 million a year. Instead, Isaac Okoro is back in Cleveland on a 3-year deal where he's making, on average, just slightly over $12.5 million a year, just under $13 million a year. That's a really good place to be for a player of Isaac Okoro's caliber. Now, Okoro obviously far from a flawless player, and we will talk about him as a basketball player coming up in segment number 2 today. But Isaac Okoro on this deal, I think, is a big win for the Cavs. And one of the other things that I look at here as I think about this is look at what the mid-level exception is right now. Look at what it's going to be over the next couple of years. And these estimates are thanks to Spotrac. But Isaac Okoro's deal projected to make $11.7 million this year, $12.6 million in 2025-2026, and $13.6 million in 2026-2027. Those 3 years are all below the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Now, the Cavs won't have access to that moving forward. They will be a tax team. We'll talk about that coming up in segment number 3. Going to talk about the cap implications because there are cap implications of this deal. Don't get me wrong. But the mid-level exception this year, just under $13 million. It's $12.8 million. Next year, it's $13.5. The year after that, it's $14.1. So Isaac Okoro is going to be on a contract that is less than the mid-level exception for the next 3 years. There will be players that are not as good as Isaac Okoro that sign contracts with teams. It won't be with the Cavs, but that sign contracts with teams for more than Isaac Okoro has agreed upon with the Cavs. That is something that is absolutely worth bringing up. It is something that is worth noting. And Okoro now is going to be the 6th highest paid player on Cleveland's roster. You've got Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen, Max Strus, Karis LeVert. So he's 6th behind those 5. Now next year, he'll be 6th still as far as guys on the books right now because Karis LeVert comes off the books as of right now, and Evan Mobley will leapfrog him when his extension goes into place. But that extension that Mobley signed doesn't kick in until next season. He's still making right around $11 million this year in the final year of his initial rookie deal. So Isaac Okoro being somebody that making this amount of money as the 6th highest paid player is a little bit of a below average slot. If you look across the NBA, the 6th highest paid player on most teams is making a little bit more than Isaac Okoro is. That's not necessarily a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think it is a little bit of an interesting quirk as you look across the league and say, okay, because we all like to compare, oh, well, this player's making this much and this player's making this much money. Isaac Okoro is making this much money. It's sort of a fun game to play with some other teams, but Isaac Okoro, just by comparison's sakes to a lot of other 6th salary slots, he's not blowing anybody out of the water. Like I said, I do believe this to be a good contract for the Cavs. I don't think it's some great contract. It's not some, super team-friendly thing. But I think it's a good contract for Cleveland. I think that if the Cavs do need to, at some point, make a trade that includes Isaac Okoro, he's a good enough player that on this deal, I don't think that will ever be an issue. I think he's always going to be a tradable player on this contract. I think that's something that I feel pretty confident in saying he's not going to underperform this money. I think there's a much better chance that Isaac Okoro overperforms his contract and is ultimately, we look back at this when he hits free agency again 3 years from now and say, wow, the Cavs really got great value there. The other thing that is worth noting here, as we talk about the ins and outs of this deal, Okoro is eligible to be traded January 15th. There are a lot of free agents that become eligible to be traded December 15th. Okoro is January 15th. So just keep that in mind. This isn't a type of deal where he's not eligible to be traded this season. And I only bring this up not because the Cavs have desires of trading him, not because it's something that could happen this year. I mean, you can never say never, obviously. But we talked about this so much with Jarrett Allen and how the timing of his contract extension determined when he could or could not be traded. Isaac Okoro can be traded January 15th. It's not as complicated in terms of timing as some of the contract extensions that we do see. So, again, to recap, 3 years, $38 million for Isaac Okoro. I think it's a very good contract for him. I think it's a very good contract for the Cavs. I think if one day they do need to move on from him, I don't think this is a deal that's going to prohibit them from doing so. I don't think this is a deal that's going to make it difficult for the Cavs to trade Isaac Okoro if they do need to trade him at some point. I think both sides win. And now the other thing too, the Cavs are at 14 NBA standard contracts. We talked a lot this summer about, they are going to need to make moves because they were at 12 and then Tristan Thompson came aboard. Then they were at 13. They still needed one more. Now Isaac Okoro is there. So the Cavs now do have a full roster. There obviously will be guys that are invited to training camp. They can add a 15th NBA standard contract, but 14 is the minimum number of contracts that you need on a roster. The Cavs are there now. I would be surprised just because of tax purposes, and we will talk about this later in the show because I do believe it to be very important. But I would be surprised if the Cavs go into the season with 15 guys on NBA contracts, standard contracts. That doesn't count two ways. So this conversation does not involve Amani Bates, does not involve Luke Travers, does not involve JT Thor, just the standard contracts. But that is something worth noting that gets the Cavs to that marker that they needed to get to. I want to talk about Isaac Okoro, the basketball player, because he does have room to grow. He's a great defender. What's his offensive role going to look like? How is Kenny Atkinson going to handle him? Those are all questions I have coming up next on today's Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard me talk a lot about FanDuel, and it's with good reason, because FanDuel is, after all, America's number one sportsbook. And when I've been talking about FanDuel, I've been telling you about some of the great parlays that they've got built for you, how it's the place to go. If you want to bet on Monday Night Football tonight, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Atlanta favored by 5.5 at home. Maybe you love that. Maybe because Cleveland beat Jacksonville yesterday, you're a winner. You got some coin in that FanDuel account of yours. You want to put it on Monday Night Football, and maybe you are not all that confident in Philly to cover the 5.5, even though they are at home, even though Atlanta did not look great week one against Pittsburgh. Maybe that's the direction you want to go. That's what I've been telling you about FanDuel, because that's part of the awesome stuff that FanDuel's got going on. But now, I've got something different for you, because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers, all of them, do not have to be a new customer here, can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you can watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. I've got Sunday Ticket. I've got YouTube TV. My football watching experience on Sunday is second to none. I can watch every game all day long. Sundays are one of my favorite days of the week because I don't have to get off the couch to watch every single second of football. It's a fantastic experience, and you're running out of time to get this for free. It's only through September 22nd, but FanDuel is trying to give you the experience that I have at home, and it cannot be beat. So just visit FanDuel.com and download America's number one sportsbook today. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. As a reminder, Locked On Cavs back to 5 days a week. We took a little bit of not a summer break, but we toned it back a little bit during the slower months of the summer. But now training camp Media Day is 2 weeks from today. As you're watching or listening to this on Monday, Media Day is 2 weeks from today. Training camp begins 2 weeks from tomorrow at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. I will be there at training camp. Cannot wait to be around basketball. Cannot wait to be talking Cavaliers with you every day. So thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. But you do have to get ready for more than just the Cavs. You have to get ready for all of the NBA. So for your second listen today, go on and enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast, because there's no off season in the NBA and we're ramping up to the real season. So Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and as entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, of course. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So with the Cavs signing Isaac Okoro to this 3-year, $38 million deal, the question then becomes, well, What is Isaac Okoro going to look like when the basketballs start bouncing and when he's on the floor for the Cavs in games again? The Isaac Okoro experience in his career has not lived up to being the number 5 overall draft pick. That doesn't mean he's not been a good basketball player, because he has been a good basketball player. I believe Isaac Okoro is a very good defender. I believe Isaac Okoro has room to grow offensively, but I'm very encouraged by what his three-point shot looked like this past season. Now I need to see it on higher volume than we've seen it at. I need to see him taking more of those shots. I also would like to see him consistently get more minutes. And that is one of the things that I'm looking for with Isaac Okoro under Kenny Atkinson. So Atkinson traditionally does not like to play his core guys super heavy minutes. He likes to spread around minutes a little bit more than former Cavs head coach J.B. Bickerstaff did, where often you would see Donovan Mitchell playing a ton of minutes, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen. Really, the starters would play more than the bulk of the minutes for the Cavs the last couple of years. I think that's going to be a little bit different this year. I think we are going to see those minutes spread out to where Donovan Mitchell might not average 34 minutes a game. It might be 30 minutes a game. It might be 31 minutes a game. Isaac Okoro averaged 27 minutes a game, which I actually think is a really good number for him. But I don't think you're going to see very many games like we saw last year where Isaac Okoro is playing less than 22 minutes a game. I think it's going to balance out a little bit more. Of course, all of this is subject to change with injuries and performance, but I think that is something that's worth bringing up. Because one of the things that stuck out to me last year was Cavs head coach J.B. Bickerstaff made a comment, and I don't remember which game he made the comment after, but he essentially said that he thought Isaac Okoro was the best perimeter defender in the NBA. It was after a game in which he shut somebody down. I cannot remember for the life of me which game it was, but he made that comment. Now, I don't agree with that comment. I think there are better perimeter defenders in basketball, but Isaac Okoro is very good. But to say, we believe this guy is the best at what he does, and then that player didn't actually play enough to qualify to win like Defensive Player of the Year or make an all-defense team. Now, I'm not saying Isaac Okoro would have won that. He would not have. Or even made an all-defense team. I think he may have gotten some votes, but he wasn't eligible because he didn't play enough minutes. That is something that I don't think is going to be the case. Like, if the Cavs truly do believe that under Kenny Atkinson, I think he's going to play more. And one of the things that needs to come along with Isaac Okoro playing more is I think he needs to have a little bit of a longer leash offensively. I think at times you've been able to look at Okoro when he's on the floor and maybe when he makes a mistake or maybe when he misses a couple of shots in a row, you can see that confidence start to evaporate sometimes. And when that confidence starts to go, it's because he's looking over his shoulder, he's checking the scores table because J.B. Bickerstaff could be sending someone to go get him, cut his stint short because his offense just might not be there all the way. It might not be the best offensive night that he has. I think eliminating those types of things and building Isaac Okoro into a more confident offensive player is something that's going to help the Cavs out tremendously. I think that should be Kenny Atkinson's really main focus with Isaac Okoro because you know what he brings defensively. I don't think that needs to change. I do think he is one of the better perimeter defenders in the NBA. I will definitely stop short of saying that he is the best perimeter defender in the NBA, but I think he's really good. Offensively, he's got room to grow, like I said. I think that room to grow is being a more confident basketball player, getting out in transition a little bit more, because I do think that he has had some pretty good moments in transition for the Cavs over the last couple of years. I think it's boosting that three-point attempts number. I think it's taking more threes. Last year, Okoro shot 39.1% on three-point attempts. That was on 3.1 a game. I'd like to see that be around 5. I'm not saying he's got to take 8 or 9 threes a game. And the Cavs do have to, their shot distribution is going to be a really interesting thing to follow when the season begins. But if Isaac Okoro is shooting at that clip, he should be shooting more. He should be more involved in the offense. He should be able to do more than just stand in the corner, than just make cuts from the corner. I'm not saying he needs to be super heavily involved, but I do think there is room for him to have a greater role than the one he's had on that end of the floor over the last couple of seasons. I think that's true. And maybe the roster does look a little bit different at certain points this year. The 14 guys the Cavs have right now are the 14 guys the Cavs have. Those might not be the 14 guys the Cavs have in February. Those might not be the 14 guys the Cavs have when the season begins in late October. Changes can happen. But what Isaac Okoro's role looks like offensively, I think ultimately is going to tell us whether or not the Cavs got the proper value for this contract. Because if he develops in, we talk about the development with Evan Mobley all the time, and we talk about how young Mobley is and that he still has so much room to grow. Isaac Okoro is only 23 years old still. Like, he's not a finished product offensively. Defensively, he might be, and that's fine. If he's a finished product defensively, I think the Cavs are in a really good spot and would take that. But I don't think he's a finished product on offense. I think there's still more for him to get after. I think there's still more that he can achieve. And if Kenny Atkinson and his staff can get that out of him, we're going to look at this contract 3 years from now when it's expired and say, wow, the Cavs really got great value on that Isaac Okoro deal. I think that is one of the things that we very easily could be saying. Now, one of the things that we have to talk about is how this deal impacts the Cavs financially. Because now this roster might need to be shaken up if the Cavs want to achieve the goal of staying out of the tax. We're going to talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Hit that thumbs up button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating on podcast platforms as well. One of the things that Isaac Okoro's contract brings into play is the NBA salary cap tax. The Cavs now are operating as a tax team. With Isaac Okoro's deal, these numbers are estimations from Spotrac, which is, I think, a very trustworthy outlet as far as it comes to contractual stuff. The Cavs are a little over $3 million into the tax. I think it is a bad idea for the Cavs to be a tax team this year. I don't think they should be a tax team this year because they are going to be a tax team for years to come. They are going to become a very expensive team. And if you're in the salary cap multiple years consecutively, I believe it's 3 years straight, you then become subject to a repeater tax. So it's not that the Cavs shouldn't be spending money this year. It's that the amount of money the Cavs spend this year can directly affect how expensive they are years down the line. Because if the Cavs are in the tax, even if it's $1 over, they can be subject to that repeater tax years down the line, and that is something that is concerning. So they shouldn't be a tax team this year because of that, and I don't think that they're a championship team. I think that teams are smart to wait to enter the tax until they are a team that is truly competing for championships. I don't think the Cavs are there right now. I think they can get there, but right now I need to see it on the floor under Kenny Atkinson before I believe that they are there. That's achievable, though. Then I bring up the repeater tax. That matters. And you look ahead to the cap picture next year, the Cavs are going to be in the tax next year. I have zero doubt about that. But I don't think it's worth it this year because they will be in it next year. So right now, the Cavs have the league minimum of 14 players on the roster, $3 million over the tax. How can they get out of this? Well, they can make trades. They can trade somebody, and I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. They could trade Karis LeVert for Larry Nance Jr. That sheds some salary. That move would, I believe, get them just under the tax line. Now it takes two to tango. I don't know that Atlanta wants to do that trade, but that's the type of move we're talking about. They will, if they want to stay out of the tax, at some point they will have to make a trade that saves them money. I think Karis LeVert is a candidate for that to happen. Now, we will see if it does. I don't know if it will. But that is something that is worth watching. Now, let's look ahead to next year, because this deal for Isaac Okoro obviously is not a 1-year thing, it's a 3-year thing. So we know right now the Cavs are $3 million over the tax in 2024-2025. For 2025-2026, i.e. next season, the Cavs currently have 10 players that are under contract. They are also currently $6 million over the projected tax for next year with this move. So like I said, they will be a tax team next year. I don't see how there's a way out of it. I do not see how they will not be a tax team next year. I'd be very surprised. So putting off being able to start that tax clock until next year, I think is a very important thing. I think it's going to need some maneuvering to make it happen, but I don't think it's an impossible thing to make happen. I think that those are the important things with Isaac Okoro and his contract. So to recap, Okoro, Cavs, 3 years, $38 million contract agreed upon. I think that there's room for him to grow offensively, and I think it is very important for the Cavs to stay out of the tax this year. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. I will be back again tomorrow with another episode of Locked On Cavs. Working on a couple of things this week. Might have a thing or two that Cavs fans are really going to like. I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want it to fall through, but there's a chance we have a pretty cool guest or two that's on this week. So keep it locked here at Locked On Cavs. Again, make sure you're subscribed. Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. Also, check us out on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, and the notification bell so you get the freshest Locked On Cavs content every day.